caught by Dyson. Can he get in? No, he cannot.
Yeah, I said it, we are. This is Rock Nation. Pledge your allegiance.
Welcome to Goal Line Stand. Day late, hopefully not $1 short. As you can tell, it's a very small panel today. It's just me and Justin. I am dealing with a little bit of a lag, so I apologize ahead of time if it crosses over or anything, and we end up double talking to each other or something. I don't know. I'm not trying to interrupt. I might be on a lag, but Justin is here with us, and we're going to try to get through some of this NFL week. What was it, week 14?
Yeah,
Already?
week 14.
Week 14 already. We get through some week 14, and we're going to double up Justin's quarterback list this week, too, from week 13, week 14. Since last week I was out. My wife had surgery, so I decided to pass on the podcast. Other people couldn't make it, or the show, or whatever you want to call it. So we are going to be doing this duo.
Yeah, duo style.
I was going to say solo, but solo doesn't make duo style. Yeah, sure. We're going to do this duo style tonight. Maybe some other people will pop on in a little bit later on and join this. But for right now, Justin, let's start week 14. Let's start with the big one. The Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs game. A lot of talk about the officiating. A lot of talk about, the way that this game ended, how it happened. To me, it looked clear that Kadarius Toney was offsides, but this is a penalty that has only been called 11 times during the year, and 8 of 11 of those calls have been on the tush-push play where it failed. What are your thoughts on this game? And is this a situation where the Chiefs have a legitimate gripe, for the penalty?
Yeah, it's hard to say if they legitimately have a gripe or not, because I tend to go back and look at films similar to like how Dan Orlovsky over at ESPN does. And Dan went back and looked at it, and I just had to go check it too, just so I can speak for my own brain, not just speaking what Dan says. But there were 4 or 5 times throughout the game that he was clearly offsides. And then I think it was about a total 6 to 8 times that it was maybe pushing the limit the entire game. So at the end of the day, yes, if you continue to push the limit, that's what us athletes are going to do. We're going to continue to push the limits, and the ref has to keep you in check. So if he keeps pushing the limit and he was enabled to push the limit, it's one of those things that's like, okay, why do you throw the flag in that situation? Because they even threw the flag late too. So in a way, they kind of looked to see what the result of the play would be, then throw the flag to throw it back. But no, it's one of those things that I think, one, Kadarius Toney's obviously in the wrong. It's a slam dunk penalty. But then the Chiefs still have a gripe too, because the ref multiple times let it slide throughout the entire game and then decides to throw it in that kind of crucial-ish moment of the game. And so at the end of the day, a receiver still has to look over to you and say, hey, I'm on the ball. And the ref typically will let the receiver know right then and there, you're offsides, get onside. Or number 2, if it happens repetitively, he'll either throw the flag then or let the head coach know so that they can get it corrected. And none of those things seem to take place during the game. So there's an error, obviously, on Kadarius Toney's part for continuing to push the envelope more and more and more. But at the end of the day, that's an athlete's job to get any competitive advantage possible. But then the ref didn't necessarily keep things in check until it was already too late. So there's some fault on both sides, but I still think it's a big enough gripe where the Chiefs can say, hey, the refs are taking Travis's greatness away. But yeah, it's one of those hard luck things. And from the Buffalo Bills perspective, the Buffalo Bills had stuff like this happen to them maybe 4 or 5 times this year. So in a way, this is maybe a makeup call for them too, in hindsight. So maybe this is some luck turning around for Buffalo, and they're back in the race again. So hard luck for the Chiefs. Chiefs definitely have to bounce back. They looked better this week, but obviously they get screwed over by this call, and now they're game ahead of Denver.
The situation's weird to me that Kansas City is in such a up in arms over this, especially whether it's from the fans or whatever else. I mean, let's first start with the officiating's been pretty dreadful this year. I mean, from the start of the year, at the NCAA level, even now, it's been pretty bad. Like, it's been pretty awful across the board. But the Chiefs have had plenty of calls or non-calls go their way throughout the course of this season that has been highlighted over the course of the last few weeks. And I'm not saying that this is something that the NFL is pushing narrative, blah blah blah, whatever it may be, but it does but stuff like this makes you question what is the legitimacy behind this, because like you said, it was a late flag. So it wasn't even one of those things where the flag was like at the time of the start of the play. So was it the result and then they threw the flag, or was it halfway through the result and then when they realized what it might be and they were like, we're going to throw a flag? So it bothers me in the sense that there's no consistency. And Troy Vincent and Commissioner Goodell both had a press conference after their meeting, and they both said it's a work in progress. And I'm thinking to myself, 2 years ago, you guys eliminated the full-time referee school because you were worried about the integrity of the game. And basically we're like, these guys have to learn the rule book, but we're not going to put them through on any level, whether it's the head referee all the way down to the sideline judge. And now we're getting two of the worst seasons the last 2 years, I feel like, of calls, whether it's the roughing the passer penalties, whatever it may be. You could throw it under an umbrella statement. And it sucks for the Chiefs in this situation, but man, they got to clean this officiating up, and they can't say, oh, it's a work in progress. Like, you guys have been around for 100+ years. Cut the bullshit. You know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that goes back to, if you want to protect the integrity of the game, then you should be spending more money for the schooling for refs, for paying refs more so that they have to be full-time and that's their only job. I mean, as an NFL athlete, none of these guys have another job on the side. Like, obviously me, I'm a free agent, so I have a job on the side as a substitute teacher and private coach, things like that, but I'm not there. So but the guys that are there making the money, that is their full-time job. So just like how the athlete's full-time job or the coach's job is a full-time job, the ref's job has to be a full-time job too. And that's where consistency can really take place. So it's one of those things that it's like, okay, the NFL doesn't need to keep pulling away. They need to push more into it if they want the game to get better.
Yeah, and they eliminated the full-time position thing was because they were worried or concerned that there might be some betting similar to what happened with the NBA. They saw what happened with the NBA, some of the bets and whatever else, et cetera, and they were trying to eliminate that. But I feel like this goes back to the replacement officials when they went on strike a few years ago, and where you can catch the player who catches the ball, and apparently that counts as a catch with the Green Bay Seattle situation. It's that stuff all over again. But I don't know. AC, we're welcome, by the way, to the show, man. We're over here just discussing the Chiefs, the ending of the Chiefs-Bills game, because obviously that's been a hot topic of discussion over here. What's your take on it? I mean, Kadarius Toney to me was clearly offsides. I mean, I didn't understand it because he's sitting there directly looking at the ball, but as a wide receiver, I mean, you have to have some sort of. I mean, you're the wide receiver of the group, so what's your take on this? I mean, is it a different perspective for you, or?
No, I mean, or you get paid millions of dollars. What else you gotta do? You know what I mean? Like it's the same thing with the dropping the ball thing. Like, what else do you have to do? Like, that's easier than dropping the ball. You know what I'm saying? Like, every time since I've started playing a position, you always check in, no matter what the case may be. You always check in. So there's no excuse, especially in that point in time. I guess for me, you would hate for you to be the reason that y'all don't win. Y'all called up the perfect play. Y'all technically would have won a game when y'all don't win it because of you. Like, there's no excuse for it. I've seen posts of like Jalen Waddle doing the same thing. It doesn't change the fact that you're still responsible. Like, every time I've always been told, like, do your 111. You know what I'm saying? That's part of that. So you cost your team. If you drop the ball, you've cost your team. If you run the wrong route, you've cost your team. It's the same concept. You know what I mean? Like Patrick Mahomes, all of those guys doing their job and you don't do yours. That's from the jump. So, I mean, I wish it was something different for the sake of the game. That's part of it, though. So he's wrong. I mean, he's wrong. You know.
Yeah. I get it, man, and I've seen several different angles from it. They've released several different angles, through Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, unless this dude, was, just for me, it seems like he could have been lined up as a linebacker, and I feel like Chiefs would have just been like, nah, he was onside.
No,
The
really.
other big news coming out of these, other big news coming out of these ownership meetings. First, I want to give a shout out to SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. They voted to have the Super Bowl there in 2027. So shout out to them. I feel like that's the second one though in SoFi Stadium, so they're just double dipping over there in that facility. But the big news coming out is it sounds like the owners are split on the tush push being banned. I'm still on the side that the tush push shouldn't be banned. I think defenses need to make a better decision at stopping the play, personally, or come up with more creative ways to stop this play. What's your tush push? What's your analogy or thoughts on this? I guess, Justin.
Well, first, let me just preface this by saying 3/4 of my career rushing touchdowns are on tush pushes, so maybe I'm coming from a biased perspective. But no, I mean, at the end of the day, the tush push doesn't need to be banned. The Philadelphia Eagles have a way of doing it, and the reason why it works is because they have guys on their D line or guys on their O line that have played rugby or have brothers who play rugby that have taught how to get low and keep your feet moving. Because what tends to happen in those piles is these linemen, whether it's O-line or D-line, they just spear their head or spear their body down, and then there's not a second push. Well, what the Philadelphia Eagles are doing so well is they're pushing downward, but it's not a scrum. It's the other terminology for it in rugby. I heard it spoke a couple days ago. But it's another type where they're truly pushing and continuing to push their legs and drive as opposed to just throwing their body. And defensive linemen have always kind of been taught, because that's what's always stopped it, because linemen didn't do it any other way, is if you just throw your body low, you can create a massive pile and then you overall stop it. Well, now the Eagles are doing it in a different way, where they're, in a way, bear crawling their way into the end zone. So whenever the D linemen push in and it's only one big push, that one big surge from the D line may be good enough to stop the play, but then the linemen continue to drive because they're bear crawling at that point, and that's where it works. So it's one of those things that I think defenses just need to learn how to stop it and hire more rugby players. It's the best football league in the world, so you can definitely go find other ways to continue to be innovative with how you call offensive plays, and then how you have to then adjust and stop it. So that's what I think the most premier league in the world should be doing, and what that should showcase. So I'm fine with the tush push staying the way that it is. Let me continue to get most of my rushing touchdowns that way. But no, I mean, it's one of those things. You gotta learn how to stop it. I understand the safety perspective of it too. You obviously have to protect heads, and with the forces that these guys are creating now, I understand why that could be an issue. But at the end of the day, if you can do it safely, and I think this way Philadelphia is doing it is more safe and probably more effective, then you actually truly see who the better athlete is at the end of the day, instead of just one surge.
I think one of the biggest things is like there's no definitive or nothing to suggest that the Eagles are going to continue being successful once Jason Kelce retires. Yeah. Like, to me, Jason Kelce's one of the greatest centers, if not the greatest center to ever play the game. And when he retires, how do you know for sure that the center that comes in there is going to be able to master it the way that Jason Kelce has? And the brotherly shove, the tush push, whatever you want to call it, for me, I don't think it's netted nearly as much injuries as they're trying to pertain that it has, per se. The other thing was the hip drop tackle that we've talked about here. They want that out of the game completely, which I'm fully on board with that one personally. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are. You guys are both offensive players. Alex, we'll start with you, because this hip drop tackle seems to be pretty dangerous to a lot of legs. We've seen it a couple different times now. Mark Andrews and Jordan Travis at Florida State this year. What are your thoughts on this hip drop tackle? And actually, have you ever had it done to you?
I've had it done a few times. I hate it, but it's part of the game. I mean, they've taken so many other things. I much rather hate the horse collar than that. It's one of those things where I think it sounds crazy to say unless you've played, but part of it comes on the offensive player. Like, bro, go down. You know what I mean? Like, you're always taught to be on the defense and the protective of yourself. So in the same breath, it's like with that's a situation as well. Just protect yourself. You know what I mean? Like, if you've ever seen when that happens, they're fighting for extra yardage majority of the time. Just go down. You know what I mean? Like, I know you always want to get the extra yards and stuff like that, but at some point in time, like, these players' job is to stop you. You know what I mean? Like, by any means necessary. And they've taken so much from the defensive players already. How do you control that? You know what I mean? Like, I think it also comes from a height weight difference too. You know what I mean? Like, certain guys, you can't even do that to. You can't do that to a DK Metcalf. He's 6'3", 6'4". So even to get up on his shoulders, You're not doing that. It normally happens to guys that are bigger, that are tackling smaller players. And so I definitely don't think you can ban it. I understand the situation, but football is football. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, if that's the case, are you going to ban cutting? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things. Like, they've taken crackback blocks, cutting from the inside. They've taken so many things out, but in the same breath, like,
the high-low block.
Like, they've taken everything away already. So it's like, at what point? It's kind of like when you're on a blitz and blitz pickup and you can chop down the linebacker. Are you going to take that away? He can get hurt. You know what I mean? So I just think it's one of those things, like, I hate to see the play, but it has to stay. It's the same thing. Like, I did want to address that tush push. I think it cheapens the game. I really do. You can't take it out, though. It's strategy. If you are going to take it out, if you're going to leave it, I think they should leave. On field goals when they say you can't jump the line,
yeah,
I think you need to add that back. You know what I mean? Because that's the same scenario. Like, if you're capable of doing it, do it. Everybody's not capable of doing that. Just like everybody's not capable of accomplishing the tush push to its effectiveness. So let it all go. You know what I mean? Don't just make it so it's offensive friendly. The whole league is that.
Yeah. I think for me, there's a couple different things here. Like, if you took the tush push away, it would remind me of when the Major League Baseball banned the shift. Like, I was completely against that. That's a stupid rule in my opinion, because the shift was a smart defensive strategic position, and there was no reason for it. Yeah, it was boring, but guess what? The point is to make your hitters better, and that's the same thing here.
Mm-hmm.
It's to make your defense better. Like, no sense in taking that out of the game. Make your defense stop the tush push. When it comes to the hip drop tackle, like, I honestly, personally, I understand the player safety side of things, and I think it should be banned if it's smart. The problem is the NFL is never smart with how they ban these things, and it makes it too subjective to the referees having their say as to, that was weight on the tackle, so that's roughing the passer. Or, clean hit up the middle on a quarterback. Oh, he didn't roll as he was coming down, so that's a roughing the passer call. I think when you take the hip drop tackle and you're doing the same thing, you're making it too subjective to let the referees continue to make really bad decisions as to what a hip drop tackle is. And that's the only thing that I would like to see, is if they do address it, would be how are they going to address it so there's no gray area. And I don't think there's a way for them to do it personally. Justin, same thing with you. I mean, and by the way, Alex, I did want to let you know that you can jump the line. You just can't touch a player when you do it.
You can
clear cut and jump over the line, but you can't touch a single player at all. Like, not even a defensive player or an offensive player. Yeah. You can clear if you can clear the line doing that, have fun doing it.
Exactly.
But you can't.
But you can, like, the reason I said that is because you can touch them on the push. You know what I mean? So
yes, yeah.
I don't think you should be able to elevate yourself. But if you do happen to touch your defensive guy, it's completely done. You know what I mean? So in some way, it has to be something. And this is coming from an offensive guy. There has to be something in the defensive favor. Like, these players are hurting themselves trying not to hurt people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, at what point do they have anything that's in their favor? I mean, they're losing games for making hits because a guy slides.
And we'll talk about that here in a minute too. Chris has joined us. Apparently he's about 15, 20 minutes into the show, and we have doubled our panel here. Chris is taking time off writing his resume to the New England Patriots to become the next head coach now that Bill Belichick's going to get fired. We'll touch on that a little bit later on as well. Chris, what's
He's
your take
upset
on
about the
everything?
AFL conversation. he has some AFL fight for him.
Well, okay, so we're in a whole other show to talk about. The truth of the AFL. There's a lot of conspiracy theories who are smoking that cocaine. So my thing.
Whoa!
That's narcotics,
Smoking
sir.
that cocaine. Look at that.
I'm just saying. So no, I'm late because I had another show that I was finishing up, leading Russia in the FCS. But what were we talking about? The hip drop? Oh no.
Well, you can touch base on anything that we're talking about. I mean, we're talking about the tush push being possibly taken away. This is coming out of the owners' meeting this week, where earlier today, where the hip drop tackle was mentioned, the tush push was mentioned as far as like possible what the discussion is going to be moving forward. So that's basically what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hip drop tackle, AC hit on the nail. They've tried to change so much. At some point, you're not playing football anymore. You need to. It's dangerous. That's why Jordan Travis got hurt. That's why he's out for the year. That's why his career might be in jeopardy, to be honest. And you look at that. I mean, I would remove it. The tush push, man. It's just that's one of those things you have to keep in, because there's ways to stop it. It's very easy to stop. I can tell you how to stop the tush push. I stop it all the time in Madden. It's a very simple thing.
Well, Madden is not throwing your body on the line. That's a video game player.
I know, but the Madden like very like real game. The developer made it really like it.
This dude,
Don't
this
get me
dude's bringing
started.
Madden. This dude's bringing Madden into real.
I don't know.
Real
I don't want to cut you off, Chris. But can I add something really fast?
Yeah.
I really feel like everything we discuss, right, rule changes. At some point, you have to go back to the original rules, to everything. Because if you don't, all the legitimacy of, say, like Tyreek Hill getting 2,000 yards, you're taking away from the legitimacy of it because of Jerry Rice being able to hit what he hit in all the parameters of what the NFL was at that time. You know what I mean? Like, you're making a player not be who he is. So saying that, this guy got 2,000 yards when you couldn't even touch him. This guy got so-and-so yards when he had a blanket of 5 yards where contact was done. It takes away from the legitimacy of what it does. It makes it stat friendly, but in terms of the credibility of the player, in no other category, sport, profession will we acknowledge that as being the same. You know what I mean? Like, if you get a doctorate online versus going to school, it's different. The trust in soul is different. If you're a surgeon and all you did was took online courses, we're not going to trust you cutting on somebody. It's just the same concept. Like, these guys are not accomplishing these feats in the same parameters as the guys that were previous. And there's another game to put those stats on.
Yeah,
so that's
and I think that
eventually you got to go back to what it was.
And honestly, at this point, Justin, you haven't really had said anything yet. We'll get to you here in a second, but honestly, I think the NBA, and as much as I don't want to put the blame on one individual thing, but I think the NBA kind of has a little bit to shoulder the blame here, because they really started getting to popularity, really started driving when they started having offensive games. If you take a look at the way that game has progressed over the last 10, 15, 20 years, it's almost virtually impossible to play defense. It's literally like fans want, and the fans are really at fault. I mean, they're the true ones at fault because they don't want to see a defensive game. Like the Minnesota Raiders game, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, was 3-0, and people were talking about that game being friggin' awful and boring and blah blah blah. And I'm like, that's a defensive struggle to me, baby. Like, I'm okay with that.
The Minnesota Raiders?
The Minnesota Vikings and the Raiders game. Yeah, they had.
It
was 3-0. And to me, I'm like, I don't care that it's 3-0 because I thought that was a defensive game. I mean, If I'm an offensive guy, am I really happy about that? No, I'm not. But I mean, overall, the actual game, there was still suspense, there was intensity, there was plays being made. It wasn't like it was just like 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out punt. Sure, there was probably a stretch there, but there were still plays being made. But these leagues are taking defensive out, like Major League Baseball with the shift, because they want the offense, because that's what drives the sales. And I think baseball. The same thing is, oh yeah, choosing baseball. Well, I mean, that might be a little bit that might be a level of cheating though on that one. But I mean, either way, they're taking out basic simple.
Did change balls in 2020. I will say that
they did. And a lot of them are, and a lot of people, they're. I think that what we're seeing is they're taking out the basic fundamentals for a lot of stuff in the name of player safety, because they realize that a game that's 37-34 is more exciting than a game that's 3-0 in the eyes of a lot of people. Justin, like I said, we've covered a lot of ground there, and you haven't said anything, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, these guys basically kind of said my kind of thoughts and pieces of it too. At the end of the day, if you're a defensive player, now granted, I'm a quarterback. I'm supposed to beat you guys. So I want every competitive advantage as I humanly possibly can to go win a football game, whatever. That's the competitor, whatever. But at the same time, you look at just football in general. Like, defensive players can't hit basically here up. They basically can't hit from like the mid thigh down. So you're creating a small little box that they can hit. Obviously you can't horse collar, and now you're probably not going to be able to pull off this tackle, which is one of the more dangerous tackles that happens. But the biggest thing is I don't trust the NFL to, if they do ban it, I don't trust the NFL to put it into true practice to where it takes subjectivity out of the refs' hands. And we've kind of already talked about this. The refs have a bunch of issues right now anyway, because they're not full-time, they're not being trained, and it's just everything's left to subjectivity, which is not creating a consistent product. So it's one of those things. It's like, it's a part of football. Football is going to be physical. The guys like us like me and Alex that go cross these white lines and go play it, we know what we're signing up for when we go play. So if it happens, it sucks. But it's a part of our journey and it's a part of our story. We just have to go recover from it and come back from it. It's a part of the story. It's a part of the adversity that then we face. So yes, I'm all for player safety. I'm all for things that are like, okay, like targeting, for example, where it's truly launching your body and with intent to hurt somebody, or this type of hip drop tackle where you're intending to try to hurt somebody. Okay, like you can throw like a flagrant in basketball on it. Like if there's true intent behind it, trying to hurt somebody, then fine, like make that penalized. But something that you do out of your split-second reaction because your job is to stop the guy, like that, I don't think has any malice intent. It's just your job to stop the guy by any means necessary. And then it goes back to like what AC said. Offensive players need to go back to saying, oh, well, we know we're being protected, so we can just keep fighting for stuff. No, you need to go back and revert to how to protect yourself and live for another down. You look at, like, from quarterback perspective, Peyton Manning took so many sacks in his career solely because he was willing to live for another down. And more often than not, he made another play on that next down, taking a sack that maybe some other these guys like a Josh Dobbs or a Patrick Mahomes would have tried to fight to get out of. So it's one of those things. It's like, okay, there needs to be some, I don't want to call it street smart, but there needs to be some of this kind of intelligence back in the game of knowing when to give up your body from the offensive player's perspective too, because yes, defensive struggles are still good games. That's football. So do I personally want to hand the ball off 25, 30, 45 times a game and only throw it 5 times like I'm in like some Team America All-Star game? No. But like at the end of the day, like football's football. So you know what you're doing when you cross those white lines. So yes, I want the safest game for myself, for AC, for any of the guys that will ever play this game. But at the same time, don't make it so hard on the defensive player to where then you now move the needle on everybody's statistics and how the game is viewed in general.
Yeah.
Well, I think AC said it right though. I mean, you're trying to make the game safer, but in the process of making it safer, guys are hurting themselves to protect the person that they're trying to tackle. Football's a violent game. I mean, when I played it and put the helmet on and I played it, I knew what I was getting into. I knew that there was an injury possibly at the core every single time that I snapped the ball to my quarterback or whatever it may be. Like I get that, and I think most football players get that.
They
It
used
just
to. They used to. Like, no, I'm serious. Like, it used to be, like you said, it was a gladiator sport. You didn't choose,
yeah.
like, they used to say, if you choose to play football, you was either a little off or you was just a tough guy. Like, even in what the position that we've done, I think Tom Brady is a big part of it. The quarterback used to be the gladiator of gladiators. You know what I'm saying? Like, he led the team and they followed him because he was willing to put everything on the line.
Yep.
Now it's like,
Bunch of Cali surfer boys.
he's protected. You know what I mean? Like, he's safe. The rest of us might not be, but he's safe. Yeah. That never was the case. And I think that's led to the lack of development of backup quarterbacks. All of that has come into play.
Well, I mean, Tom Brady was the spearhead of that situation for sure. And I find it comical, in my opinion, that he was talking about how there's a lot of bad quarterback play and how the game has gotten soft and et cetera, when really, I mean, he had several rules created in his favor because of it. And I get what the NFL is doing, because the narrative is the quarterback is the most important position on the field. That's the narrative you hear all the time. The QB this, QB that is the most important position, blah, blah, blah. No offense, Justin, by any means. We had this discussion. I know that you are, on the fence that there's other positions that you may view as
I know who makes sure my butt isn't on the ground, and I know who keeps my passes. So I know it's not
they needed to drive this narrative that the QB position was the most important, so they needed to protect their investments on the guys that were being the stars of the thing, so they couldn't get hurt, et cetera, et cetera. And it worked out in a sense of that it's now softened the game in other areas too, because they realize that they have these stars. And like, no offense again to Josh Dobbs or anybody in Minnesota, but there's a difference when you have a 4,000-yard passer and Kirk Cousins out there rolling out in Minnesota, who's been with the team for 4 years, than it is Josh Dobbs, who's been there for 4 days. So the NFL's like, we got to protect those guys. And they have really softened the game to the point where they've actually made it worse. If you take a look at the quarterback injuries this year, and none of them even involve the hip drop tackle, none of them involve the tush push. You're talking there's like 8 or 9 guys that are out for the year as far as is concerned. Now, some of them are freaks. Obviously, like the Achilles injuries were just kind of, they just popped. Some of the hand injuries
this year than I've ever seen in a while. Yeah.
The wrist injury with Burrow, the thumb injury recently with Herbert. Some of those injuries are kind of like, Anthony Richardson's injury was actually on a contact play because he was doing what AC just said you shouldn't do. So it's like, even though you're trying to take the injuries out of this game, there's still going to be injuries in this game, regardless, no matter what you try to make the changes to. You just got to try to find a way to make it safer, in a sense, without ruining the game. Yeah, and I feel like that they're ruining the game in the process here. So,
and that's my other excuse me, and that's my other thought too. Is I feel like the NFL too much, like you were kind of saying there, was I feel like they are more pandering to the fan or catering to the fan that wants the high scoring offensive shootout every single game, and then they're labeling it as player safety. That's where my probably biggest problem is with all of this. It's labeling it as player safety, but in reality, it's really just for your product.
No, it's asset protection.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they're putting it under the umbrella for. And I'm actually going to go one further here. I'm not really a big conspiracy theorist, but the league is a multi-billion-dollar league, and there's a lot of investors, a lot of sponsorships, and I go even further to be like, a team, if I'm going to put my business onto something, I want the guys that are going to bring in the most attention still on the field, to me as well. So I think that there's a business side of that too, where they're like, there might be some business people that are, corporations in the ears of Roger Goodell and Troy Vincent. No, I could be wrong, obviously. I mean, I'm not saying they're selling their souls per se, but you have to take that into a consideration for the factor of what we've seen over the last 20 years in this league with stuff like that. And I hope that they don't continue down this trend and they find ways to make the game safer without completely changing the game as a whole, because right now it's looking like we're going into a completely different field as to what this is. And Sam, let Coach Wells know that he'll get his push-ups. I've just been insane with everything that's been going on for the holiday season, so I'll get him out to him here soon. I haven't forgotten. I just haven't done them yet. Let's see. Brock Purdy. Are we sold yet? I sent a little video. MVP. Okay, I sent a little video in the thing about all the things he's going. I don't know if you guys watched it or not, but I mean, I see MVP numbers when I look at a video like that. I mean, I don't know about you.
I think everybody knows where I sit on this if you have watched my quarterback rankings at all this year. So I think you know where I stand on that.
Oh, well, let's go into your quarterback rankings. Let's jump into week 13, week 14. If you're ready to roll here, we'll jump into those and get that set up, and then we'll talk about some of the other games afterwards. It's a good little segue there.
There's a lot of things to take into account when you talk about being viewed as a top 5 quarterback. It's not a laundry list. This is a list that, it has to be taken very seriously.
Well, let's start off with week 14. So obviously I've been out for a little bit, was sick last week, and still kind of dealing with some of it now. But hey, we're here, so we got 2 weeks to cover. So let's start off with a week 14. We got a lot of different guys on this list, and some of the same guys that have appeared as well. So let me go ahead and start with my honorable mentions from order of what would have been could have been 5 and went down the list. So my first honorable mention would be Lamar Jackson. Had a terrific game, but still doesn't make my top 5 list. Bailey Zappi, Drew Lock, Jake Browning, which is a surprise one to probably not make my list, and Tommy DeVito. So that would be my honorable mentions. But let's go ahead and get into my top 5 for the guys that just kind of sneaked in and made great plays and played really good games in week 14. So starting off with my number 5 quarterback for week 14, Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is elite. He's back. 92.0 QBR with he went 26 of 45 for 311 yards, 3 touchdowns, and the interception. The interception came on a miscommunication slant. So that's one of those things that you can't really blame Flacco for the interception on. But Flacco came off the practice squad and morphed back into his elite form. His arm strength and his ability to push the ball deep down the field and outside the hashes really opened up the Browns' offense to be able to then pound the ball down the middle. And Flacco's always been elite, and he continued to show that with that performance there. And that defense had to respect Flacco's deep ball. So Joe Flacco makes a rare appearance and is back in the top 5 in 2023. Yeah, in 2023. I'm surprised I'm saying that. But anyway, so on to my number 4 quarterback. So number 4, Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford had a 103.1 QBR, 23 of 41 for 294 yards and 3 touchdowns. Stafford looked like prime Dirk Nowitzki out there, throwing dimes while fading away, and all of his natural crazy arm slots that he has all over that Baltimore Ravens secondary. He had 2 key drops that could have added some more stats to the stat sheet, but an overall great performance for the former Georgia Bulldog. He's leading a really good offense right now, and this offense is clicking pretty well. And, yeah, they ended up losing the game by the overtime punt return, but the Rams are definitely in the heat of the NFC race, and Matthew Stafford's probably a big – or not probably, he is a big reason for it. My number 3 quarterback for Week 14 is number 3, Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott had a 99.4 QBR, 24 of 39 for 271 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he also had 3 carries for 11 yards and another touchdown on the ground. Dak continues to dominate when they blitz and give him man coverage. He's also picking apart zone coverage and extending plays with his legs. He's firmly in the MVP race, in my opinion. and his play is not slowing down at all. This Dallas Cowboys offense is clicking on all cylinders. This Cowboys team is really fighting for this NFC East title, and they took it to Philadelphia this week in ultimate domination. So Dak Prescott, becoming a mainstay on this list, comes in at number 3 this week. Number 2, do we say MVP? Number 2, Brock Purdy. Brock had a 122.1 QBR. He went 19 for 27 for 368 yards, 2 touchdowns, and the interception. Brock is not a one-read throw guy, nor is he a short throw and yak stat stuffing type guy. Brock is legitimately running an elite offense and manipulating defenses and throwing the ball into windows, and 2 great playmakers. He's extending plays with his legs and keeping the offense on schedule, which is a lot harder than people think. And he's making routine plays, play in, play out. Despite the 1 interception, he was pretty much flawless all day. And that's where Brock falls number 2 on my list. But coming in at number 1 on my list for week 14, number 1, Zach Wilson. Zach had a 117.9 QBR, 27 of 36 for 301 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then he also got another touchdown on the ground. Zach was in control on Sunday. He played loose. He played free. He delivered accurate balls all over the field, and he was on time and rhythm, which was rare to see out of him. When needed, he was excellent in the improv game, like we all knew from his BYU days. This game is something that hopefully can reinstill some confidence in him. And the Jets maybe try to push to do something really good down the stretch here. Obviously, I think they're kind of out of the race, but that's something that Zach Wilson really, really needed for confidence-wise. And so he comes in for my number 1 quarterback of week 14. So for this week 14 list, let me know what guys I left out. Obviously, some really good honorable mentions down in the bottom that probably deserve some spots on this list. Let me know in the comments what you thought about any of those. And, hey, you can feel free to roast me in the comments so we can debate. So that's week 14. And then if you want to roll the intro again, we can do week 13 too.
Alex has got player safety happening right now over here on yeah, he's over here.
Is that the Columbus Lions? Oh, I thought that was a Columbus Lions helmet for a sec. Yeah.
Hey, Chris, how does it make you feel that Zach Wilson is better than any quarterback currently on the New England Patriots? All right.
I mean, Zach played well. Zach played well. I mean, no, I think, it's about settling in, having that confidence, and then they really got behind Zach this week. And I really hope he can build off that performance. He showed that he had talent.
And I will say this. I really thought about putting Bailey at number 5, but I think the first half would have put him number 5 on my list, but then obviously things started to tail off a little bit because they had such the great start that then the offense kind of sputtered towards the end. But I played Bailey twice in my college career when he was at Houston Baptist, now Houston Christian. So he's a great dude, heck of a football player. So it's one of those things where I'm glad that he's actually doing well. Now I kind of hate it because I know both Mac and Bailey. So it's like, all right, I kind of want both of them to do well, but then again, I want both of them to do bad. So maybe I'm a Patriot. But no, I'm glad that he's doing well, and hopefully he'll continue to progress. Well, let's get on to week 13.
That second half was absolutely dreadful for him last week against Pittsburgh. I mean, it wasn't dreadful, but it was not very, very good. All right, let's jump into Art's QB list.
There's a lot of things that take into account when you talk about being viewed as a top 5 quarterback. It's not a laundry list. This is a list that, it has to be taken very seriously.
So just did week 14, and we're coming back to reverse and do week 13. So here's my top 5 quarterbacks of week 13. Let's start off with the honorable mentions. I got Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, Geno Smith, and Matthew Stafford as honorable mentions for week 13. All had really, really great days, but they didn't crack my top 5 this week. So let's see who cracks my top 5 this week for week 13. So coming in at number 5, I've got number 5, Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence had a 125.4 QBR. He went 22 of 29 for 258 yards and 3 total touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence runs the show in Jacksonville, and he's playing some great football right now. And the injury is just very, very unfortunate. Now, obviously, I'm doing this after week 14. So Trevor Lawrence obviously bounced back from the injury and still had a decent game, although he threw the 3 interceptions. But we're not talking about week 14. We're talking about week 13. So Trevor Lawrence did very, very well, and he continues to run this offense. And when Trevor Lawrence goes, this offense and this Jags team goes. So Trevor Lawrence coming in at number 5 on my list for week 13. Coming in at number 4 on my list, Tua Tagovailoa. Tua had a 141.0 QBR, 18-24 for 280 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tua took shots and threw the ball all over the Commanders' defense, and he looked poised and in control of this high-flying offense all day, despite not really having to throw the ball more than 30 times like he usually does. So, hey, you've got Tyreek Hill. You've got this offense that's high-flying right now. You've got to be the gunslinger that continues to run the show, and he's doing that and did that very, very well in Week 13. So he comes in at number 4 on my list there. Coming in at number 3 on my list, Jordan Love. Jordan had a 118.6 QBR. He went 25 of 36 for 267 yards and 3 touchdowns. This is now 4 solid performances in 5 weeks for Love. He's learning to take calculated shots and be aggressive, all while taking what the defense gives him, and that you got to have it. And so this is what the Packers hoped Love would be, and he has to continue to build off of that. The biggest thing was we knew he was going to be aggressive, but he has to be able to learn how to take calculated shots, and he learned, or at least showed that he's learning how to do that. And so he's putting together some really good football these last couple weeks. And I think he's back in the race of definitely being a guy that the Packers can say is our franchise quarterback like they were hoping he would be. So now let's go on to my number 2 quarterback for week 13. At number 2, Brock Purdy. Brock had a 148.8 QBR, 19-27 for 314 yards, 4 touchdowns. Brock is the ultimate game manager. He makes the right reads, accurate throws, and he distributes the ball like the elite point guards like Chris Paul, just diamond the ball all over the field and allowing these amazing 49er playmakers to go make plays. You still have to be the gunslinger that lets it go and gets it to those guys. And again, that's hard to do, or it's easier said than done. So Brock is doing that very, very well, and he's definitely putting himself in the MVP race for sure. But coming in at number 1, my number 1 quarterback performance of week 13 is Jake Browning. Jake Browning had a 115.5 QBR, 32 of 37 for 354 yards and 2 total touchdowns. Jake Browning and Zach Taylor got comfortable with each other early in the game, and he used his mind to manipulate defenses and check into good, smart plays based on what the defense was giving him. Yeah, it didn't look special where he was just kind of nickeling and diming down the field, but he had to make those checks based on what the defensive coverages were allowing him to, and he became only the 10th player in the Super Bowl era. He became only the 10th player in the Super Bowl era to have 350 plus passing yards in a game, where his completion percentage was 85% or higher. So that's an elite performance. I'm not going to say that Jake Browning is the second coming of Tom Brady, like some people have said, comparing Joe Burrow to Drew Bledsoe and Jake Browning is Tom Brady. I'm not there to say that, but Jake Browning definitely came out swinging, got comfortable, and is really creating a nice little story here for Cincinnati to continue to maybe bounce back again after the second injury to Joe Burrow. So Jake Browning, my number 1 quarterback of week 13. Let me know what you think about this list. Obviously, it's a week late, so you can grill me in the comments for that one. But no, let me know who I left out this list, and definitely comment, or we can go debate it. So, but anyway, that's my week 13 list and week 14 all at the same time.
I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to tell you that I know that it feels like he is, but I think Brock Purdy's actually more than just a game manager. His 9.7 air yards is average, is the highest in NFL history.
Yeah.
Of all qualifying quarterbacks. And as far as Jake Browning is concerned, I'm not surprised with Jake Browning's performances. I'm not surprised with him. I think people tend to forget that Jake Browning was a 5-star recruit and he was touted as the next big thing. But injuries in college really set him back, and I think that it took a tough time for him to latch on somewhere. But the kid has always had talent. I mean, he was he was a highly recruited 5-star, recruit at a high school. So it's not like it was one of those situations where Browning never had the talent and it wasn't recognized. He just had injuries set him back and stuff. So I'm glad Browning's doing this because I think that he's a much better quarterback, and I'm glad he's getting a chance and an opportunity. Not at the heels of Burrow because I like Joe Burrow, but I think Browning is very capable to if he can reach his potential and find an organization to reach his potential, then sure. I don't know what AC's doing. I mean, it looks like he's gearing up to stop a tush push, maybe.
He's ready to go catch passes from Jake Browning instead of me.
There you go. Yeah, he wants to go play for he actually wants to go catch passes from Flacco. He wants to go catch from the Browns because he's a Brownie. He likes the Browns. That's his squad over there. No, he shut his camera. He's going to come back with he's actually on his way to Maine. I think I should probably lock my doors. Krish, I want to come to you to start off this next segment or this next issue because it involves your team. Report came out this week too that Bill Belichick is gone, essentially. Somebody freeze frame that AC picture. I want to get that, and so I can send it to him for a Christmas present. The little helmet with the heart going on there. He's at the Bengals. He got the Bengals. He came off. He got the Bengals jersey up. Look at it. The Bengals. Look at him. Krish, Belichick. And you're on mute, so don't even start talking yet because I know that you do that sometimes. So
no. So
what's your thoughts on this, man?
Man, he has to go. I think it's time. I think his relationship with media. The media is at an all-time low.
Is that a Milwaukee Bucks hoodie?
I think.
Krish.
AC's
Krish, he wants to know if you were wearing a Milwaukee's Bucks hoodie there.
Yeah, that's my Bucks hoodie. I'm a Damian Lillard guy. I think you do
know they just lost the in-season tournament. Never mind.
Dame and Giannis are both Hall of Famers. Anyway, so my thing is Belichick has to go. Gerard Mayo is going to be the next head coach. I've been told that many times by many people who are in the know. Gerard Mayo will be the next head coach. I can confirm that. And if that's not true, that would be crazy. But Gerard Mayo,
just don't go bet on it, Chris, because we know your betting history.
Okay.
Oh God!
I'm telling you though, I got inside on this one. Like Chuck. When I say I have inside, but no, I mean, yeah. And then I think Belichick wants to pass Don Shula. That's why he's still coaching. Otherwise, he would be in his grave. So he's still coaching because of that. And I think he's gonna go to the Chargers, and they're gonna be a Super Bowl contender when he goes. I believe that once he goes to the Chargers, but the type of coach he is, he'll become a Super Bowl contender. Mark my words. For real.
Justin or AC on this Belichick rightfully should be fired, or I mean, thoughts? I guess either one of you.
Yeah, at this point, I think it was time for him to go. You look at, because he was the GM role too. You look at his drafting history, and they haven't necessarily. Kendrick Bourne, the best receiver on the Patriots. But you to look at the draft history and the talent that's truly coming in. It slowly started to kind of tail off in terms of the level of guys that he was able to go get. And so something has to change. And it's just kind of unraveling there. Now, when we get into the whole Mac Jones debate and the whole offensive play caller debate, I do think the Patriots offensive staff, like the Bill O'Briens and stuff of the world, have definitely messed with Mac Jones's brain. And you can see that by watching film with how he deciphers defenses. He's messed up out there. His brain's not. He's thinking too much. He's not wired to do what he did so well in college. And so you have those issues there. And at the end of the day, it's just a cluster. And it's time for a change. Now, we all know at this point, I think everybody already knows more than likely going to go be the Chargers is where Bill Belichick goes. I think that makes sense for Bill. They have the talent. Now, will I think that team respond to him? Not 100% sure. But no, I mean, I think it's time. All good things have to come to an end. And I think it's just time for the Patriots and Bill to go separate ways. I mean, Tom Brady did it, and Bill's a couple years later.
Alex, your thoughts on this? Do you agree with what the other two have said?
I don't have any thoughts on this.
No thoughts on this. Okay, no, that's.
I'm not wasting any time on the Patriots.
You're just
They're not even contenders.
You're just here so you don't get fined. You know why? You know why I'm here, right?
They're not even contenders. Why we have, but like.
Well, I mean, with Belichick, it's been going on. I mean, we're talking about a multiple-time Super Bowl winning coach. At one point in time, was considered the greatest coach to ever coach the game.
I just feel like talking about the Patriots is like talking about the Seminoles in the playoffs. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Oh man, Here you go again.
Oh yeah, no, that was too far.
Yeah, got
there you go.
Yeah. Right here, mad. Hold on.
You know what's funny about it is I'm not even mad about the Florida State thing, man. Like I never was mad about it. Like because I expected it. I went to bed that night expecting that was what was going to happen, and if
you know how it works,
it's just to me that it was a disservice to everybody else that was on that team. Like Alex, if you played wide receiver for Florida State, man, and you went out there and that happened, and they were like, Jordan Travis is the reason you didn't make the playoffs. And then you saw Jordan Travis finish 5th in the Heisman voting. Like, the NCAA just literally basically said that this guy was so important that he kept you out of the playoffs, but he wasn't important enough to be a finalist in the NCAA Heisman running. And then on the flip side of that, too, their ranking doesn't make sense. So they ranked them.
None of what happened makes sense.
Yeah, they ranked them 5th ahead of Georgia. You know what I mean? Like Georgia was the best team in the week before. You know, so like, what are you really saying about Florida State there? And I think that it was just because it was an SEC school.
It's college football.
They couldn't have
a whole.
Yeah.
You know, like Florida State not being in it makes no sense.
Yeah, it makes no sense at all.
I think it's impacted honestly by what happened last season with Michigan and TCU. Like y'all didn't even put up a fight. You know, so it's spearheaded by money.
TCU beat Michigan. They just got blown out by Georgia.
They didn't put up a fight, but in the same breath, it's money. You know what I mean? But
yeah, that's all it was.
Jaden Daniels wins the Heisman because of his numbers.
2 times back to back. All right, anyway, sorry.
You know what I mean? Like he wins the Heisman back. He wins the Heisman because of his numbers. Yeah. When Neighbors loses, Biletnikoff. He has better numbers.
Because of the politics behind Marvin Harrison Jr. being the narrative of the greatest wide receiver in the world. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you spin back, and the team that's undefeated and the team that won 29 straight games are both out of the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like I said, I'm not even mad about it because I fully expected it, because when it comes down to the ACC narrative versus the SEC narrative is always going to get the edge no matter what it is, whether it's a one-loss champion or an undefeated champion in that sense. So steering this back to the NFL purpose real quick, I did want to make a quick thought on Bill Belichick. As far as Belichick is concerned, the only part of the coaching decision or the coaching thing that I have an issue with is how he handled Mac Jones. I think he gambled with Mac Jones's career. I think it showed last year when he had Matt Patricia be the offensive play caller. Didn't give himself a situation where he was going to keep an offensive coordinator to be able to grow Mac. Hold on one second, Chris, just because this is kind of important. You're talking about 3 offensive coordinators in 3 years for Mac Jones. Justin, you and I have talked about quarterbacks, offensive coordinators, and their development when you have a constant rotation there, Baker Mayfield being one of them. Bill Belichick was at fault for that. Now, I think Bill Belichick's biggest issue, though, is the GM side of it. He's a terrible GM. The fact that Robert Kraft didn't tell Bill Belichick, hey, Brady's gone, either you need to relinquish your GM role and just coach this team, or you need to step into the front office in some capacity, was a Robert Kraft issue, not a Bill Belichick issue. I think it's time for Bill Belichick to move on from New England, but I think it's time to move on from New England because of Robert Kraft's ineptness to rectify a situation before it got to this point. That's my thought process on it. I've taken a lot of heat for it, especially being up here in Maine and New England country, but that's my thought process on it. And Chris, go ahead, man. I don't know if you necessarily agree with that or if you're going to roast me on that too, but I mean, or try to.
I agree with you on that. I just have to say this one last thing about Florida State. Florida State does not believe in Tate Rodemaker. They never did. He was a pawn to try to get them to the next step. That's why you guys are putting all the resources in Cam Ward. They're in a battle with Miami. Miami seems to be the favorite, and Tate is about to hit the portal. So,
I mean,
college recruiting.
But if I had a choice between Cam Ward and Tate Rodemaker, I'm taking Cam Ward any day of the week. That has nothing to do with whether or not we believe in Tate. That's just if Cam Ward wants to come to Florida State. I mean, it's clear to me that Cam Ward's the better of the two quarterbacks. You come to Florida State. DJ Uiagalelei is also linked to Florida State, and I'm not sure how I feel about that one. Great year last year. Great year last year at Oregon State, but I don't know.
You don't want him. Not a great year this year.
He had a good year this year.
I just find it crazy.
He had a decent
quarterback actively,
but it's the
NIL opportunity.
It's the ceiling. He did so bad at Clemson. Like, it's kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't accomplish anything in the Pac-12 though. You know what I mean?
Uiagalelei had an actual couple decent good years at Oregon State in comparison to where he was at Clemson. It's just
absolutely like the ceiling is different for his expectation.
It's just
like,
Uiagalelei. Do I really want him as my quarterback? That's the thing. Justin, we're going to switch over to Minnesota Atlanta real quick because that was your team involved in that, or Minnesota and the Las Vegas Raiders in that one. Because Minnesota's your team. I enjoyed the game. But what were your thoughts on it? I mean, I mean, it wasn't a great game by any means, but I wouldn't go out of my way to be like, this is the worst game of all time.
Yeah, no, the score doesn't sit like it doesn't show really the true story of the game. I thought both offenses moved the ball really well in their own territory, but then once they crossed the 50-yard line into opponent's territory, that's where defenses stepped up and played really good defensive football. I mean, the Vikings are probably a top 5 defense in the NFL right now, and the Raiders are probably a top 5 defense in the NFL right now as well. And so that's kind of a game with two young quarterbacks or unproven quarterbacks. You're going to get that. I mean, I thought Aiden O'Connell played fairly well. I thought Josh Dobbs maybe took a little too much heat for the performance. I think there's a lot of unseen things that Dobbs actually did well in that game. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, 10 of 26 for 63 yards or whatever it was in the fourth quarter when you bench them and you've already missed one field goal in like the second quarter and it's still 0-0. Like, yeah, you've got to go make a change to try to go win that game. And then Mullins seemed to at least kind of give a spark. So I understand the move to now bench Dobbs and run with Mullins. I think I was in the camp of if the magic did run out with Dobbs, and I'm speaking from someone like, because I know the dude, but if the spark ran out with the Pasternaut stuff, then Mullins, I think, was a capable guy to go step back in and do it. I mean, he's statistically his first 4 games or whatever it was in his debut with the 49ers are one of the best, like, or maybe in the top 3 of best first 4 games of somebody's NFL career. I'm not saying Nick Mullins is going to now win the starting job in Minnesota and be the franchise guy. It's just you understand that to try to even make a playoff run where the Packers and Rams are now breathing down your throat, you got to make a change, and Josh unfortunately wasn't doing the trick, at least getting the results, even though he was doing some good things. So I feel a little weird about it. But Mullins did seem to keep things on schedule and keep things in, like timing throws, make those a little better and stand in versus pressure to make and deliver throws, which was something that Dobbs hadn't done. He was quick to jump out of the pocket and try to make plays with his legs. And so that was necessary at times because the offensive line play wasn't the best. But then you see Nick Mullins stand in and take a shot and deliver a nice little dig over the middle. And you're like, hold on. Yeah, like you can still stand in the pocket and take a shot, even if the offensive line isn't playing well. So it's one of those things that, do I think Nick Mullins now comes out next week and lights the world on fire? No. I hope they go win the football game. But it's just one of those things I think you have to make the change. And if it doesn't go right, then Dobbs maybe gets another shot. Or if you're out of the playoff hunt, then throw Jaron Hall back out there because he didn't do bad in the Atlanta game.
Yep. AC, the Bengals. The Bengals look like they have themselves a nice, decent little backup quarterback with Jake Browning. You were out here repping their hoodie or whatever a minute ago. What's your thoughts with the Bengals moving forward? Are you excited with Browning leading the team the rest of the year? Did we lose him? You're on mute. I don't know if you know that.
My bad. I'm okay with Browning leading the team. I don't think he's your typical backup quarterback in the first place. I think he's one of those guys that got lost in the shuffle. But if you look at his production and what he accomplished at Washington versus him becoming a backup, I think it's poor scouting. I think that's what he's the product of.
Yeah.
I can't remember when he came out, him actually getting a fair shake at that job anywhere. I know that there were a lot of people real high on him when he came out of Washington because I think he's their like career leading passer. I thought he was real impressive at Washington. So I'm confident in what he does. Like he has a lot of ability, he has athleticism, he has a strong arm, and he takes risks, you know what I'm saying, which is what we definitely need. And right now, I mean, with there being one starting quarterback in the AFC North, we're all tied except for Baltimore. So we're 7-6, just like the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't care if he takes us to the playoffs or not. I want him to have a successful season because going forward, I think we may fall into that Ben Roethlisberger, Charlie Batch mode where we need a guy that's just as good. That's the backup. Not saying he's on the same level, but I think he's sufficient. You know, Joe Burrow, I hate to say it, I'll give him maybe one more time, but he's proven to be injury prone. I hate that connotation on guys, but if you peel back, the reason he left Ohio State was because he got hurt. And then the same breath, his rookie year, he tore his ACL. Then he got hurt again the year after last. So it's kind of like, it's a combination of being able to protect him and also him staying healthy. I don't know which one is which. You know, taking so many sacks may play a role in it, but I think as a team, we're looking better in our secondary. Hendrickson is third in the league in sacks. So that's always an upside. Defensively, I think we're playing solid. Joe Mixon is doing what he's doing, and finally Taj Brown is showing what I've believed he's been able to be. So I'm optimistic about it. I definitely think we got to keep forcing the ball to Jamar Chase. He's a guy that the more he gets it, the better he gets. You know, so I'm optimistic. If I'm not mistaken, we have one of the hardest remaining schedules. So
yeah, it's pretty tough for Cincy.
It's pretty tough. Yeah, it's pretty tough for Cincinnati moving forward.
I mean, it's pretty tough for Minnesota too. You play Cincinnati and then Detroit twice.
The expectation isn't high, but I'm very pleased from what I've seen. Being able to escape the last two games the way we have, I'm satisfied with it. You know, whatever happens from there just happens, but I don't have any complaints. I really want us to go out and get somebody impactful in our secondary. So if we put ourselves in a better position in the draft, I'm cool with that.
I'm going to go a step further here and say something that I don't know if a lot of people necessarily may agree with in a sense, but I think Jake Browning has the talent to be a starter in this league.
Without question.
I think he has the talent to be a top 32 quarterback in this league. I don't know if we'll ever see it, so I hope that he.
I think Jake Browning's better than Bailey Zappi. Then that's not a knock on Zappi.
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
I agree.
What he did is the equivalent of Michael Penix, is it not? So you know what I'm like? I don't get it. You know what I mean? But like you said, like we always talk about, Justin definitely chimes in. The scouting of these quarterbacks lately, certain guys go a whole different direction, and it's like I don't know if it's the popularity. I truly believe there's GMs that I want to be the guy that finds the diamond in the rough instead of the guy that has the resume, regardless of where he went, just the resume of being dominant. You know what I mean? Like he was dominant.
I also feel like a lot of it is media driven, and
Yeah.
I hate to say that a lot, but like Dontario Poe comes to mind, the Memphis defensive tackle who was projected as a 3rd-round pick. He went to the Underwear Olympics, lit the Underwear Olympics on fire. The media talked about him for like literally 4 weeks, and suddenly this guy was a 1st-round pick. He went like number 16 or something to Kansas City and just kind of faded away into the background. Not saying that he wasn't
Did
a
he
talented
transfer from Bama?
Who, Dontario Poe? Oh, I don't know. He might. This was before the whole transfer portal, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
But he ended up he played at Memphis. That's where he played. He was an athletic freak, and the next thing you know, Kansas City took him at 16, and then he just kind of faded away. Not saying that Dontario Poe isn't a talented player. It's just that if he had been drafted in the 3rd round compared to the 1st round, that pressure and that hype would have been taken off of him, and he probably would have actually developed better over the course of time. And I feel it's the same thing, especially with the quarterback-driven position. You know, I think the quarterback is the exact same thing. It's all this hype comes around, and they ignore certain things. Like Johnny Manziel got drafted in the 1st round because of who he was in college and what he brought. Tim Tebow got drafted in the 1st round. Tebow is one of the greatest college football players I've ever watched play. He was not a good quarterback. And I stand on that. I know that a lot of people don't agree with me when I say that, but I don't think he was a good quarterback. But he was one of the greatest college football players I've ever watched play the game. 1st-round pick. You know,
but so, I don't think that's a fair.
What
I don't think it's a fair assessment. No, I'm not saying that you're wrong.
No,
I think like
that's
you
fair.
say though,
Yeah.
you ignore everything else.
Yeah,
Like Ken Dorsey happened to play with one of the most talented teams ever assembled.
Right.
The Florida Gators were one of the most talented teams ever assembled. Yeah. So if you put Tim Tebow on the Mississippi State Bulldogs and flip that quarterback here, what's happening? Or him and Cam, you should switch them. Him and Cam, from the Auburn Cam to the Florida Cam. Auburn had no one. You know what I mean? Which is why I think it translated to the NFL. Cam was an MVP. Tebow was Tebow. You know what I mean? But I think those are the things, like you say, people don't take that in consideration.
Yeah, well, and I'm not knocking Tim by any means either, because it was very much an Urban Meyer system. It was the system that happened. It didn't develop him as a quarterback on the quarterback front side of things. I mean, but it was just the fact that Tebow suddenly was a 1st-round quarterback, not a 1st-round football player. You know, like dude was a top 10, top 5 football player. He was not a 1st-round quarterback in my eyes, and he still went because the media loved Tim Tebow, because Tim Tebow was such an electric college football player. You know, so I think a lot of times we see this media-driven side of things with stuff like that, and that's where people, like you said, get lost in translation. Like Brock Purdy had a very good career at Iowa State. There was no reason for him to be Mr. Irrelevant. None at all.
Exactly.
For some of the quarterbacks that were picking ahead of him. You know, Justin, I mean, do you have first of all, am I out of line with the Tebow comments? And second of all, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think it's a media-driven, like, thing or what? Like,
yeah, I think in the draft processes and in building hype, I mean, part of like when you watch ESPN, what does College Game Day do? What is all these like pregame shows and all that do? They hype you up with narrative, story-driven things, and because of the way quarterbacking is and how limelight sensitive it is, like it's one of those things that like you're going to be in the limelight all the time, and they have to continue to try to push narratives so then they can create stories and they can create fans for certain quarterbacks or certain teams or certain storylines. So and that obviously will then fall into the draft process when guys like, okay, you see a Johnny Manziel or a Tim Tebow who may not be the greatest quarterback to ever light the world on fire, but all they do is win by any means necessary in some amazing, crazy way that no one's ever seen it done before. And so then you think it's football. So football is going to translate to when you go play football in the NFL. And everyone just assumes it's going to be great. Now, you're also looking at me, a Georgia Bulldog fan that shouldn't like Florida, and I don't like Florida. But Tim Tebow is probably my favorite quarterback of all time, not named Aaron Murray. And so the thing is, I think Tebow was still given an unfair shake in the league. I think if he was truly given chances to develop more instead of like even sit behind Peyton Manning, I think he could have done things. Now, granted, he then moved on to the Jets and then New England, and things didn't work out there. And then obviously tried to come back as a tight end later with the Jags and all that. Like at that point, the career was shot. But I think you could have salvaged something in Denver where I think there was just too much pressure on him to be something that he probably couldn't have fully developed into. But I still think there was a quarterbacking role there to where he could have still been successful, even if it was in a way like a gimmicky package guy and maybe a 33rd, 34th best quarterback, somebody's backup or a bad team starter. Like I think there was some place where I think he could have developed into a better quarterback than what he was. It's just hard to say that when the narrative constantly was 3 bad quarters of terrible quarterback play, and then the fourth quarter would turn it on and he'd actually look pretty good or at least passable to go win games. So it's one of those things that I will always say Tebow deserved more of a shot, but that's my fan side of it. But at the same time, you got to look at the film, and yes, he wasn't the greatest quarterback in the world. But that it is what it is. But the quarterback stuff is definitely narrative driven. And that's how it's going to be. And because that's how the world is, like same way in business, same way in anything else. Like a lot of things are narrative driven because that's where the money's at.
I wish Tim had. I will say that I feel like we were robbed of being able to watch a great football player play football in the NFL level with Tim Tebow. I wish he had taken and been Taysom Hill before Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from with the development side of things with the quarterback because I agree with you with Urban Meyer.
The exact opposite spectrum of it, but I see a lot of Jalen Hurts in him. People gave Jalen Hurts a chance to use the work ethic that he had to develop into what he is now. Yes, you still see problems with Jalen Hurts and in Jalen Hurts' game now, and why the Eagles, I don't think, end up winning the NFC East. But Jalen had the same issues at Alabama. He got benched for Tua for that reason. So, and then in the NFL, had those same issues and then came back different. I think if he would have sat behind Peyton Manning and truly was able to go, now granted, again, biased because he works with Tom House, but spent more time with Tom and really developed a whole new mechanical set of throwing instead of the whole cock down, back and up. Like if he was really able to truly ingrain that in and Milanize that, and I won't go any more sciencey than that. If he was able to Milanize that movement pattern to where it would happen in the game, he probably would have been more accurate and would have been a better quarterback. Because I think the pieces were there. Again, he just wasn't given the time to be or to develop into the quarterback. But again, it's the NFL. You're paid to be there. You got to be the finished product because that's what they're paying you to be. They're not going to give you the time to do that because they only care about wins and losses.
I completely agree with you that I feel like Tim had a chance to grow into becoming a quarterback that we all expected or saw or whatever. Because again, when he was at Florida, Urban Meyer and that system did not allow him to play the quarterback position the way that the NFL needed him to be playing at that point. And then when he got to Denver, he got stuck with Josh McDaniels, who we've all seen what's happened with that situation, right? So that was 100% of Josh McDaniels driven pick. I get that. And Tim Tebow was a winner, but so was AJ McCarron. And nothing against AJ McCarron,
But I think it's two different types of winning too.
Well, right, but no, again, no offense to AJ McCarron by any means, but AJ McCarron's not going to be a guy that we're going to see turn into a unworldly quarterback of this situation. He's going to be who he is. I think Tebow had the chance if he had found the right system in a right situation, maybe as patient as Buffalo was with Josh Allen or something like that, to grow into a spot.
Yeah.
I just don't know what his ceiling was going to be as a quarterback. Again, as a football player, I think Tim Tebow, I'm a fan of the football player. I'm a fan of him as a football player. I just wasn't a big fan of him as a quarterback. And it is a little bit of an unfair shake on him because he never really got that chance to get into that developmental spot of a quarterback spot. But that first round pick, in my eyes, was very much a media-driven pick because of how good Tebow was as a football player.
Mm-hmm.
They thought it would translate to that quarterback spot. That's my non-playing,
yes,
not being a player.
I will just say this: I think his ceiling could have been maybe the 15th to 20th best quarterback in the NFL.
Okay. Okay.
And that's where I think the ceiling would have been.
Yeah. I think that's actually a fairly fair spot to put him in there out of the 32. Yeah. For sure.
Now, if we're talking about 2023, he could probably definitely be 15 with how far and what Tom Brady's doing about quarterback play.
Yeah, with everything else that's going on right now, he probably could be in the top 15.
Yeah, Tim, you should have been my age.
Yeah, no doubt. And to be honest with you, with the way that the game has changed too, I feel like that Tim was a little bit ahead of time. Kind of like Achilles Smith. AC knows a little bit about Achilles Smith in the Cincinnati Bengals situation, and an Oregon guy for that matter. Achilles Smith was way ahead of his time. I feel like Achilles Smith in today's game or a guy like Achilles Smith in today's game would have lit the world on fire. Speaking of Achilles Smith, his son actually, I think, just committed to Oregon State. Achilles Smith Jr. Same position, quarterback too.
Like Dennis Dixon was ahead of his time.
Yeah.
But
I think it's just my thought.
You go back to talking about what I was saying about poor GMs, in terms of the recruiting. You got to look at the rest of the spectrum. Tebow's a guy that you wished it worked.
Yeah.
But if you take being a fan of him as a person and what he represented, Tebow was a really good football player, but I don't think anyone would argue that when you talk about full football player, Percy Harvin was the guy. So if you take him away from Tebow, who is he after that? You know what I mean? There's a lot of situations in that game where that Denver Broncos team that beat Pittsburgh, that team was loaded from top to bottom. So it's in terms of development, what were you looking at that made you, like you said, spend a first-round pick on him? Because honestly, quarterback play, I think Chris Lee was the better quarterback between the two. Cam Newton showed us that he was the better quarterback at Florida. He just wasn't going to get the shot. He speaks about it all the time. But if you look at who does more with less talent, it's definitely Cam Newton. So when it comes to Tim Tebow, it's how many people are going to give you the platform to say, I promise that I'll play the hardest and you won't see anybody play harder than me? Bro, that doesn't mean anything. It's about what you do in the field. Nobody cares about your pledge to play the hardest out of the country. You can't even guarantee that. But we gave him the platform to make those statements. So it made you fall in love with the character that is Tim Tebow. But when it comes to what he did on the field, he wasn't wowing anybody through the air. So you get short yardage and get first down. That's not quarterback play, though. Like you said, that's more Taysom Hill, like you said. What is that? So in terms of giving him a first-round grade, I think that's just poor recruiting. In terms of, where are you going off of? Because he's the winningest quarterback? Wasn't Eric Crouch a winning quarterback?
And they moved him to safety.
I don't understand the logic behind that pick. Like you say, I think we all just wish he did. We all wish because it's Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
The narrative of him as a person is incredible. But when you talk about the player himself, it's like, yo.
Oh yeah, no, I think it would have been better for his career and probably the NFL in general if he was a second or third round pick.
I just think for Minnesota, I think from the Pittsburgh game that you brought up, Alex, like even in that game, he went 10 for 22. And I mean, it was 10 for 22 for 200 and some odd yards, but the game-winning touchdown to Demaryius Thomas was literally, I think, like a 7-yard slant that Demaryius just broke for the touchdown.
Luckily, you had a 6'3", 4'3" receiver that could do that with the ball.
Rest in peace.
You threw a 7-yard, you threw a 7-yard pass.
It was pretty much like a 7. I think it was like a 7-yard or 8-yard slant on that play that Demaryius. It was man to man, and Demaryius just broke it. I think he was 10 for 22, if I'm correct, or 10 for 23 in that game.
10 for 21 for 316 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, he averaged 31 yards a pop, and I don't even know what the yards after catch was.
Demaryius just. DT had 4 receptions for 204 yards and a touchdown.
you see what I mean? Though, like, I mean, again, it's not a knock on Tebow by any means, but that game was won kind of in spite of Tebow, even though those numbers are very ungodly. Those numbers are wow. I mean, those numbers are incredible.
The talent he had, especially on the defensive side of the ball, was enormous. Like that team, I don't know. You kind of just, what was the guy? Justin, you remember the guy? He it came out a few years ago. He had made so much money as a backup quarterback his whole career.
Oh yeah,
Chase something, isn't it?
Chase Daniel.
Chase Daniel was unbelievable in college. Oh, he was incredible.
You know what I mean?
And
so it's like when.
I just went back and watched it. That was a 19-yard pass that he took for 80, so it wasn't a 5-yard pass. Just saying. All right.
Oh, what? Oh, wasn't that? Was it long? I don't remember.
It was a skinny post. It was a skinny post that he caught at like 19 or 20 yards downfield that then he took.
Oh, I always thought it was a slant. For some reason, my memory always said it was a slant. I don't know why, but.
Yep, it was a skinny.
Like a glance.
Okay, I can.
Yeah, it was basically a glance. Hold on.
Okay. I mean, I can give him credit for that one then.
Yeah,
for sure. I can give him credit for that one then. Oh yeah. Okay. Wait, was that the game-winning one?
Yeah, that was the walk-off.
Oh, okay. I'll give him credit for that.
The fastest guys like.
Okay, I'll give Tebow credit for that one. I always thought it was like a 7-yard, 8-yard slant. So okay, I'll give him credit for that one then.
Yeah. Well, hold on. You can talk about something else. I got something for that.
Oh boy. I mean, I'm okay with slants. I think slants are great, but
that's a deep slant. If you take a 19-yard pass 80,
yeah.
In the NFL, that's gifted. Like he said, 4 for 2 something. That's crazy.
4 for 200.
All right.
And there it is. Hey, look at that. There's the 2. Hey, but you know what? You know what was also really great about that? And I'm not taking anything away from the slant because I think the slant's a very effective pass in football by all means. I'm not taking anything away from it. I mean, Michael Thomas has made a career off running them when he's on IR. But that was actually a really, really good ball placement from Tebow on that throw too. So,
and I think they definitely like you appeal.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, you appeal, and I mean Justin plays quarterback. No, you appeal to whatever the best throws are that your quarterback can make.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Want to slant, not necessarily even slant, but I know digs and posts are some of the most higher percentage throws that are down the field for quarterback. Because it's right across. It's right across your vision. You know what I mean? So your margin of error is a lot smaller. As long as you don't throw behind, you know. What do they say? Just miss.
What?
If you're gonna miss far and inside, is that what it is?
Yeah, no, yeah. If you're gonna miss, not inside, miss outside, miss far and outside.
Far and outside.
Because if you miss far inside, you're thrown to a safety.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Joseph.
High and outside.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It's the fade route and it's the sideline out route on the short side of the field that are the two of the hardest throws to make for a quarterback.
Yeah, so the hardest throws typically that a quarterback will ever make. Now it does get a little easier in the NFL because then obviously seams or your side or obviously your hashes are closer. So far field hash is still going to be throwing it like a deep out. Far opposite hash is still going to be shorter than like college or high school. But yeah, typically it's it's like your 10-yard out. Or even your 4-step out, which is like a 5-yard out from opposite hash, is your big boy throw, or your 18 to 15 comeback is going to be your big boy throws. Those are the two that everyone says that if a quarterback can make that in high school or college, it's the NFL throw.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why part of the reason why whenever I post some of my social media clips, it's always those, and I always myself opposite hash.
I always know if a quarterback can hit a comeback, say if he's on the right, if the ball is on left middle and he can hit the comeback on the right side, his arm is different.
Oh yeah,
because that throw is ridiculous. You know, the margin of error is so small. And like you said, for us, it's the 6-step out, but it's what we all call it.
Yeah, I mean, I've always called it a 6-step out just for the viewers at home. It's like it'll basically put you at 10 to 12 yards, depending on how the receiver runs. Yeah, I've always just called it your 6-step out.
Yeah, like that throw is impressive. When it's on money, it was impressive. The hardest thing to catch is corners from an indoor.
Oh yeah.
The corner route is the hardest.
Yeah, I was going to say probably the corner route indoors is definitely probably the toughest. All right,
especially
guys.
When you got those curved end zones.
Those curved end zones are
a
nightmare.
We can't see y'all though. When y'all throw the ball, like when we stack it inside, stacking on top of the center, we can't see you guys.
Yeah, you can't see it at all. You don't see it until the ball's halfway to you.
You just see the drop in, like
yeah.
You got to make sure you can track that ball halfway through the air.
I'll tell you from my mind, every corner I've ever thrown in an arena, especially when I see those curved end zones where the pylon should be, I always get nervous for you. And I'm like, I don't want to overthrow this, but I know I have to. So I'm going to put it out there and hopefully you go get it, but I'm going to turn around and look and then hopefully you pick up the ball and say touchdown later. Like it's one of those, I'm like, I'm not going to watch you hit the wall, but I'm going to throw it there.
I'm not going to watch you hit the wall, but I'm going to throw you into it.
I'm expecting the wall. I've gone over it so many times. I'm okay with it because I'm not looking like if I go to a corner route, I just drop my head and take off. Like it's my job to get there. It's his job to put it there. So I'm gonna just say, boom. Either we touchdown or we just run it again.
Yep, run it again, no doubt. All right, that's going to do it for us here tonight at Goal Line Stand, I believe. I don't think anybody else has anything. No, good.
I mean, I guess how about them Cowboys? But we can leave it at that.
Yeah, let's just leave it at that. I don't feel like talking about them. My Commanders are probably the only team that can lose on a bye week. So yeah, that's going to do it for us here. Until next week, have a good one.